I really should have known better. Adaptations for video games are usually trashy, and this one's no different. Still, I do respect the attempt in a lot of ways. The general idea is there, and the team certainly shows care for the source material. But the gameplay and general execution of the whole thing is flawed beyond belief. Admittedly, after a rough learning curve, I was surprised to find myself enjoying the game quite a bit. But objectively speaking, there is so little here that's any good, and only diehard fans will get much enjoyment out of this. The game is split into two modes, Hello Abyss and Deep in Abyss. You have to play through Hello Abyss first, which follows the story of the anime and acts as an elongated tutorial. Afterwards, you move on to Deep in Abyss, where you create a custom avatar and play out the real meat of the game, following an original story with both familiar and new characters. To say that Hello Abyss follows the anime isn't necessarily inaccurate, but it is a little bit misleading. For starters, it ends at episode 8, which is about the halfway point of season 1. It's also an extremely abridged retelling of the anime. It touches on the main points and still follows the same plot, but you're really not getting much out of it in this version. In fact, I dare say that this is the worst way to go through the story, and I'd strongly discourage playing this game if you haven't at least seen all of season 1 of the anime yet. But anyway, for those who don't already know, Riko is a young orphan who raids the caves and deepest recesses of the Abyss, a mysterious chasm filled with dangerous creatures, ancient technology, and a deadly curse that permeates the air and afflicts those who attempt to return to the surface. While exploring the Abyss, Riko finds an amnesiac robot boy, who she names Reg, and the two are determined to go as deep as they possibly can in search of answers, hoping to find out where Reg came from, where Riko's mother might be, and why the Abyss is the way that it is. The follow-up story, Deep in Abyss, takes place shortly after Riko and Reg leave on their adventure. It mainly features 4 characters, including the player character and 3 new characters. However, Raul and Dorothea don't actually get much to do throughout the whole story. It's mostly about the player character and Tiare, and another original character, Dechuanga, plays a big role as well. The story isn't too bad as far as a side plot in a larger world goes, but it progresses very, very slowly, with nothing happening for extended periods. The way it all comes together in the end isn't too shabby, and there are some additional side plots here and there that are neat, but none of it is justified for how slow the pacing is. I don't hate it, and it does offer some neat lore and a different outlook on the Made in Abyss world, but it's not great and nothing you have to go out of your way to see for yourself. The main draw here is the presentation, which is quite well done, for the most part. Pretty much everything is voice acted, and all the original cast members reprise their roles, which is nice. The voice acting isn't bad, but the voice direction is stilted in that unique video gamey way.
Oh, there is one more thing.
That makes 2 things.
That makes 2 things.
That's 2 things.
It's a shame, it should have been done much better, but I suppose this should come as no surprise. The actual dialogue and depictions are mostly in line with the anime, although they've toned down the explicit content a lot. There's almost no mention of Reg's penis, and no young girls are ever shown topless. However, there is a, 1000% increase in characters talking about young children getting strung up naked.
Sorry, Riko. It's our fault, too. If we have to, we'll get strung up naked with you.
Don't dig up the maiden's trauma! This time, I was finally punished by being strung up naked. Ew. I couldn't take it. It was horrible. I may be a cave raider, but I'm a maiden first. Riko really is a legend. She holds the record for both the number of times and also the total amount of time she was strung up.
Next time, the culprit will suffer more than simply being strung up naked.
I was worried that even though we finally made it back, we'd be strung up naked.
The night's celebration continues on. However, it goes without saying that Nat was strung up naked for eating other people's food.
I want to be a legend, like Riko with her strung up naked legend.
Maybe, but if anything happens to Maruk while Ozen is gone?
Right. Getting strung up naked is the least of our worries.
Although it's never actually shown. The gore and violence is severely toned down too. There are some unique death animations that can be somewhat gruesome, but none of it comes as close to the level of detail and uncomfortable presentation of the anime. So yeah, it's all a little bit watered down, but the same idea still gets across. Visually, the game is on point, for the most part. Plenty of attention to detail is given to much smaller aspects. Being able to walk around and explore some rooms in the orphanage and seeker camp is really neat, even if it is ultimately pointless. The areas of the abyss are great too. Key moments from the anime are faithfully represented, and it gives an idea of how cave raiders are expected to traverse this world. There are plenty of original areas too that don't feel out of place at all, and most of it comes together quite well. Then you have Edo Front at the very end of the game. What the hell is this? It looks cool in the anime, so what the hell is this garbage? They probably assumed that no one would play this far into the game. They also heavily skimped out on the Garden of Eternal Fortunes. It's barely represented in the game, and what little there is disappointing. Ah well, you can't win them all, I suppose. The music is nice, I like it. I have a hard time describing it much beyond just sounding cool, but I find it gives a vibe of mystery and adventure, if that makes any sense. The music in the town can get a little annoying, but other than that, it's a solid soundtrack. Overall, the game looks good and it sounds good, but there is one aspect here that's not acceptable. It's got some pretty absurd graphical glitches. This seems to be most severe in the second layer, particularly in the inverted forest, but it can happen elsewhere as well. Random objects will flicker in and out, but they won't have any collision to them. One time, the floor for a rather large area just didn't render at all. This is really bad, but it thankfully and strangely becomes less common the further you get into the game. It's rarely game-breaking, but it can potentially get in the way pretty badly. So the presentation is hit or miss, but for the most part it does the job. It's a fairly decent representation of the anime, and it's cool to explore this world. As for the gameplay, this is where things range from bad to worse. It's largely a survival simulator of sorts, where you have a weight limit to your carrying capacity and a hunger gauge to keep track of. There's a lot of crafting involved to make more effective meals, medicine, tools, and weapons while you're out exploring. You'll have to keep track of your stamina while attacking, running, and mountain climbing, and failing to properly manage it can easily lead to an instant death. There's also the Made in Abyss trademark gimmick, the Strains of Ascension. For every 10 meters that you ascend too quickly without resting, you'll be afflicted with a side effect. This usually involves losing a large portion of your hunger gauge, which can be devastating on deeper expeditions, but more severe strains can cause you to lose health directly, as well as a loss of your senses, represented by temporarily reversed controls, and that can cause your death rather suddenly if you're not prepared for it. It's a pretty cool way to implement the strains, and the game certainly wouldn't feel complete without it. Progression is made by completing quests, which advances the story and levels up your character. Speaking of which, participating in combat doesn't provide any money or experience points at all, as you'd expect from most RPGs. Instead, selling treasure and finishing quests is your only means of gaining money and experience. This goes along with weapon durability and resource management. You only want to attack creatures to get them out of your way or to bolster your supplies. For the most part, attacking creatures recklessly will only leave you with broken weapons and no means to defend yourself. Much of the game will actually involve avoiding enemies, since weapon durability can be a precious resource. As you advance through the story, you'll gain promotions in your whistle ranking, going from red, blue, moon whistle, black whistle, and finally becoming a white whistle. It's very ridiculous in how short of a time span a child can advance so quickly, especially since everyone else remains red whistles. But whatever, I guess. This is just a non-canon side story anyway. With each advancement, you'll unlock new upgrades on your skill tree. There isn't much in terms of customization, but the upgrades do make the game significantly easier once you unlock them. So, what's the big deal? What's so bad about this game? Well, for starters, the combat is absolutely garbage. It's going for that typical third-person action RPG approach, like Dark Souls or Ocarina of Time, where you lock on, circle around the enemy, that whole deal. But it is very poorly implemented. Like, the basic idea gets across, sure, but the attacks have hardly any impact to them, and worse yet, the enemy AI is absolutely worthless. Maybe I could excuse this if there wasn't such a focus on combat, but look, remember the battle between Reg and Ozen in the anime? Here's how it gets represented in the game. Wow, that's pathetic. And the music is trying its best, but I mean, come on. It also doesn't help much when your allies get involved either. Seriously, you're better off going solo in this game. To be fair, some of the later boss fights are more involved and challenging, but do keep your expectations very low in this regard. On the other hand, certain enemies are insanely obnoxious. The random encounters against foreign cave raiders are the worst. There's no rhyme or reason to this at all. You will land an attack, but it's a complete 50-50 chance as to whether or not they'll dodge and avoid all damage. But your weapon durability still goes down. Hell, I've broken my weapons in situations like this. It defies all logic and is completely ridiculous. Like I said earlier, you're better off going solo. But it's not like you ever have a choice. Whenever you are cave raiding with allies, they get extremely obnoxious very quickly. Your friends never shut the hell up.
Come on now.
Yes, I'm hungry.
Come on now.
You're so many.
I wonder why too. Come on now.
You're so many.
What a pain. I wonder why too.
You're so many. Seriously?
I wonder why too. I wonder why too.
You're so
Come
many.
on now. I wonder why too.
You're so many.
Just ask us if you don't know something.
It is ridiculous. They'll loop the same lines of dialogue over and over and over whenever you pick up an item, whenever they see an enemy, and oftentimes for no reason at all. You have no idea how annoying this is unless you've played it for yourself. It's insane that this was implemented like this, and it's completely unnecessary. You can rely on your allies to kill enemies without expending your own weapon's durability, but it's not worth it just to have them yabber on like this. Alright, so the combat sucks. What else is there? Well, I suppose that the game's real focus is on resource management and exploration, and this is a little bit more interesting. As you explore and collect items and treasure to bring back home, you'll have to decide what's worth keeping and what needs to be discarded as your weight capacity reaches its limit. In the early game, before you have an understanding of which items are good to go for and a general idea of what your capacity is, you'll be spending a lot of time in your inventory menu dropping a ton of stuff. Thankfully, unlike some crap like Death Stranding where it can be bloated and obtuse, inventory management here is actually very straightforward and fairly quick, but it's still very important to keep a close eye on. One of your earlier lessons will be to double check your capacity before you mine for a rock on the side of a mountain, as exceeding your capacity will cause you to immediately lose your grip. Resource management covers several avenues. You'll need multiple weapons to defend yourself as they weaken and break. You'll need food to satiate your hunger. You'll need medicine and healing items to restore your vitality. You'll need tools such as pitons and rope to traverse the environment. You'll need to collect treasure and other supplies to make the trip worth it in the first place. And you'll need to make it back home safely. Unfortunately, it'll take a while to get a good grasp on the ins and outs, and the introductory Hello Abyss mode doesn't do a great job at impressing the importance of most of these game mechanics. You rarely have to make return trips home, all of your weapon durability is always infinite, and reg acts as a replacement for your ropes. So once you actually start the Deep and Abyss mode, it's a rather sudden, rude awakening. Even then, the game still fails to impart some really important aspects. For one thing, it's never explained that returning home with damaged weapons will automatically repair them for free. Well, that would have been a huge help to know ahead of time. As such, you can have several expensive, high-class but damaged weapons on you, but that's fine as long as you make it back home before they break. And it seems like this is how the game is designed to be played, but this is only revealed after plenty of trial and error. Another thing is cooking. You have all these complicated recipes, but all you really need is just salt. Bring a ton of salt with you on every expedition, and as long as you have weapons to hunt with, then you should never go hungry. How about this skill description? Increased gathering speed. Why would I ever want this? I already gather stuff quickly enough. Actually, what this does is double your pickups whenever you collect an item, and it's a huge game changer. This game is terrible at explaining itself, and it's not intuitive at all. Climbing mountainsides is also hopeless unless you have the lunge ability. You'll need this right away, but again, the game never makes that clear. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite mechanic, respawning enemies. This is so weird. Even after beating the game, I'm still not entirely sure how it works, but it seems like the more time you spend in an area, the more that enemies will just respawn right on top of you. And they are relentless. This can be an easy source of food, but they get in the way more than anything else. I really need a fish here, and these enemies won't let me. The only thing that respawning enemies could add to the game is pressuring the player to hurry up. But isn't that what the hunger gauge is for already? This is just needlessly annoying. Honestly, the whole game would be practically unplayable if it wasn't for the generous autosaving. Unlike Zombie, for example, you don't get sent back all the way to the start if you die. Made in Abyss autosaves pretty often, and unexpected deaths are usually curtailed fairly easily because of this, but mileage will vary. especially on your first time through when you're trying to take it slow and explore. So a lot of the game is basically designed around trial and error. You keep experimenting with what works and what doesn't work until you finally get a handle of what the game expects of you. And with that in mind, let me walk you through a little adventure I had. This is the first time I made it to Seeker Camp, deep in the second layer. I thought I was prepared, but woe is me. Ropes are heavy and precious resources, and I had to use 3 ropes already. I mean, damn, cut me a break. Thankfully, I'm picking up more supplies for ropes along the way, but this can be random, so I'm just getting lucky here. Well, I accidentally ascended too quickly, causing me to die. Gotta be more careful. What? Another rope? Okay, fine, well, hopefully I'll have enough by the end. Oh, come on, you can't be serious. There has to be another path. You really need 5 ropes just to get to Seeker Camp? Seriously? 6 ropes? If I run out of ropes, then I'm screwed. I'll have to restart to a previous save. Or walk all the way back home, which is almost pointless. My hunger is dwindling too, but I'm sure it'll get restored once I make it to Seeker Camp, just like in the anime. Oh, what the hell, yet another rope? And these respawning enemies, there's 5 of them, they're all over me. Give me a break already. Wait, what the hell? No! Are you kidding me? Why? This was seriously my experience going through this game for the first time. It was absolutely miserable. Well, it turns out that was mostly an optional alternative path, I guess. There's a much more direct path I could have taken to Seeker Camp instead, which hardly requires any rope. Great, I wish that was a lot more clear. I feel like I just wasted half an hour for no reason. So, finally, against all odds, I make it to Seeker Camp. Oh, come on, there's an impromptu boss fight? Sure, whatever, but my hunger is running dangerously low, and I'm almost out of weapons at this point. Not to mention that this is such a stupid fight. The Inbios purposely stay out of reach, and you have to wait for them to come down, unless you have a ranged weapon, and I can't leave this battle even if I wanted to. Okay, so I have barely enough supplies for me to build 1 gun and 1 bullet. This better work. What the hell was that? Needless to say, I never bothered with ranged weapons for the entire rest of the game, and I never found them to be necessary either. Finally, it's over. I'm really running low now, but at least I'm in the clear. Another boss fight? There's no way, I can't do this, I'm at my wit's end here. Okay, I made it. Barely. Now I'm finally at Seeker Camp, for real this time. After a bit of a cutscene, I'm quickly let back out and... hello? No meal or restocking of supplies? There isn't even a shop here? Really? Nothing? Oh, no way! I'm out of food, I'm out of weapons, I'm done. Even if I did have weapons, the game doesn't let me attack without stamina, so it's pointless. That's game over. I gotta restart this whole trip. I thought I was prepared enough, but clearly I was wrong. All this time was completely wasted. I was so pissed off, I nearly quit playing the whole game right then and there. I couldn't believe how asinine the whole thing was, and the way that the game autosaves prevents me from fixing my mistakes if I proceed too quickly. As soon as I started that boss fight, I had already signed my death warrant. The attack power for weapons are another thing. I really don't get how the numbers work. The small hatchet is the cheapest, lightest, and easiest weapon to use, yet it still takes 2 hits to kill a little bird using a weapon with double or triple the attack power. Maybe there's some hidden values with defensive stats or something, I don't know. But regardless, it doesn't seem logical to carry stronger weapons when small hatchets seem to work just fine. Until all of a sudden, they don't anymore. Well, this trip was another big waste of time. I'm stuck in this boss fight that I clearly wasn't prepared for. So now I have to restart, go back to town, and figure something out. It feels as if the game is constantly playing a prank on me, and it's very frustrating to have my time wasted like this. However, the more and more you play the game, the better you start to get at it, the easier it becomes, and the less frustrating it is. Part of that has to do with leveling up, but you also start to get a better understanding of what the game actually expects of you. You stop bothering with picking up every item you see since you're going to have to abandon most of it anyway. Your initial exploration of a new area is always the hardest, but once you have a lay of the land and you've mapped out a good path back home, then the game gets a hell of a lot easier. Your approach in this game should always be to over-prepare for an expedition. Bring extra rope and more food and salt than you think you'll need, and try to avoid attacking enemies unless you know they drop good meat or you're starting to run low on supplies. It's obnoxious that these lessons are taught in the harshest ways. I've wasted too many hours on failed runs because I kept running into unexpected trouble. But once I got a better handle on the game, I was actually having some fun with it. It's cool to explore and discover secret paths and see what absurd areas the designers come up with. Again, if you're a fan of the anime, then it gets represented surprisingly well, and it's cool to check out this world in a video game. When you get down to it though, that doesn't excuse all the issues. The combat is trash, there's no getting around that, and while exploration can be fun, that'll only last you for so long. The majority of the game is diving a little further into the abyss, and then speed running all the way back home on the same path you're going to take 100 times over. Respawning enemies are insanely obnoxious. It's not too unlikely to get stuck in an unwinnable situation unless you over-prepare. The AI is brain dead. Most of the crafting supplies are either highly situational or otherwise pretty much useless. Ranged weapons are extremely useless as far as I can tell, and the overall presentation, while not bad, isn't really good enough. Certainly not to make up for all the other flaws. In the later half, I actually started to have a good time, but objectively speaking, this game is just not good and I cannot recommend this. Even if you're a diehard fan of the show, you're gonna have to put up with a lot of nonsense, and it's really not worth it. Well, believe it or not, I was just about to publish this video when I found out that there's actually going to be an update for this game. And some of the patch notes actually sound like it might make a difference. Adjusted the balance of reappearing enemies. Good lord, thank you. Fixed an issue where the attack would sometimes not hit the enemy. Wow, it's as if they actually want this game to be playable. Strangely, this update has been available on Steam since December, and it's still not on consoles. Also, keep in mind that the game originally released in September. It took 3 months to patch this game on PC, and they're only just now talking about doing the same on consoles. Who knows how much of a difference this stuff would make anyway. Ideally, it would change the game from being obnoxious to bearable, and at that point, I'd be more willing to recommend it to fans of the anime, but that's about as far as I'll take it. Thanks for watching my review on Made in Abyss: Binary Star Falling into Darkness.